You're listening to the Baumbastic Podcast with Andrew Ellis on Inside Arkansas.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Baumbastic Podcast presented by Inside Arkansas and hosted by Andrew Ellis. It is Thursday, February 6th. It is my nephew Cooper Ladner's birthday, so shout out to Cooper. His brother Carson's birthday was yesterday. February is a big birthday season, apparently, but shout out to my two nephews who I love dearly, and I know that they love Arkansas baseball as well, and they are just as fired up as you and me to watch this Arkansas Razorback baseball team in action. We will get to do it in official capacity next weekend as they take on the Washington State Cougars in a 4-game series, and the weekend after that in Arlington. We got to hear from Dave Van Horn to kind of preview that trip. Why did they do a weird press conference featuring 8 coaches 2 weeks before the event? Nobody really knows, but we did get to hear a little bit from DVH. Not going to touch on that much because he didn't have a ton to say, again, because the Arlington trip is next week. In fact, he said, I hope my players aren't worried about the Arlington trip. I hope they're worried about Washington State. Again, we will get to see this Arkansas Razorback baseball team in action next weekend against an actual opponent, get to start those hot takes, those overreactions. We'll find out who we like, who we hate on the team, all that fun stuff. But before they do that, there are 3 more scrimmages. We have one more weekend of scrimmage action at Baum-Walker Stadium. They have not officially announced times for those scrimmages. I will tweet it out whenever they do. If I had to guess, I would go out on a limb and say it's going to be around the same time they've been doing them here lately. We'll have to kind of monitor weather. Who knows how cold it's going to end up being, but it's typically been in the 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock range on Friday, and then a noon or shortly after noon on Saturday and Sunday. We'll get exact times tomorrow afternoon on Friday before they scrimmage, I would like to imagine. But I would imagine it's going to be around those time frames. But again, we're going to have 3 more scrimmages, and so that's kind of one last stand for some of these guys to make their claim for a starting spot, whether it's in the field or on the mound or whatever. And before we do that, I kind of just wanted to talk about some of the biggest unanswered questions left for the Diamond Hogs. Not really big picture. Obviously, we have a lot of questions for this baseball team as we enter the season. At the top of the list being, are you guys going to choke in the postseason again? Of course, that's a big one. Will this team win it all? Can they beat Tennessee? Can they beat A&M? Can they beat LSU? Whoever it is. There's a lot of questions that are unanswered, and we won't get to answer them for a while. But in terms of going into the season with this baseball team, as we look inward and try to continue to analyze and break down every aspect of it, I feel like there are 3 big variables, I guess, that we have to figure out. For me, it kind of starts in the outfield. If y'all remember, when I relaunched this show back on Inside Arkansas channel back in, I guess that was late November, early December, the first episode I did was on Kendall Diggs and how I felt like his return to action kind of forces an outfield conundrum where you have all these outfielders who are vying for 3 spots, and then you maybe will move one of those guys. We assume they will. And what's that going to look like? That was even before I realized the Rocco Pepe to first base thing was a thing. And definitely before I realized that they were going to try out Kendall Diggs there at first base. But that's kind of been a storyline for a few months now, is what's Arkansas going to do in that outfield? Who are going to be the 3 guys? And when you decide on those 3 guys, what do you do with those other guys, whether it's Pepe, whether it's Diggs, whether it's Maxwell or Thomas or whoever? And so I think that's kind of the big question we need to talk about. And then I think that kind of goes hand in hand a little bit with first base, because I think that's another big variable that is going to affect a lot of things on this baseball team and sort of the lineup they put together. And of course, it's not going to be definitive clarity of like, all right, this is the right fielder, this is the left fielder, here's the first baseman, that's it. There's going to continue to be some evolution there. Different guys are going to get their opportunities to start in the lineup with the main group. And we'll see that play throughout the, however many weeks of the season, maybe 3, 4, maybe even 6. Maybe it'll carry into conference play, or maybe we'll all come to a conclusion here in the next 10 days. I doubt that. But again, I really want to talk about those 2 spots and sort of the lay of the land and where we stand on that. And I also, of course, got to talk about the starting rotation, because this has kind of been a storyline all offseason of Arkansas brings back Gabe Gackle, who we all reasonably had assumed would be in the starting rotation. You bring back a guy in Gage Wood, where if you look at his career arc, kind of makes sense for him to be in the starting rotation. We saw glimpses of him as a starting pitcher last year. And then you bring in the 2 top-ranked transfer portal pitchers, both of which were weekend starters at their previous school. And so right away, before they had even had a practice, this team had something to figure out because they needed to cut that down to 3. And they will not have to make that decision until they go to Arlington. And so we'll see how it plays out. But I want to continue to kind of assess where we're at with that situation because it's a fascinating one. And it's one that all Razorback fans seem to have their opinion on. And it's kind of crazy. Like, I've kind of said all along, it doesn't matter too much to me, like which direction they go. But depending on who you talk to, they're like, oh, it's for sure Landon Beidle. She's like, obviously. Then you may talk to another guy and they're like, dude, it's obviously Gage Wood. How could you even, consider anything? So it's like a lot of confidence on both sides of the coin. I'm right down the middle where like, I don't know what the answer is going to be. I don't even know who I prefer. Frankly, I think there's a case to be made on either side. I think both guys are capable of being very effective. But what we're going to do when we get there is we're just going to look at the numbers. And I keep saying numbers. I have some stats with me today. And again, these are small sample sizes. These are stats from the last 2 weekends of scrimmages added together. I want to give a huge shout out to, of course, Daniel Shee for always being on top of it, being at all these scrimmages, especially when I was in Lexington last weekend and couldn't be there. So for having that, Andrew Hutchinson helps put together like the big spreadsheet. He's not able to go to all the scrimmages because he's got kids and a life and things to do. But me, him, Daniel Shee, and sometimes a couple other guys will pitch in together and try and tally up all these stats together. And then Hutch throws them all into a spreadsheet. And so we have them. And so through those numbers, and we have numbers for the fall, we have numbers for the exhibition series, we have numbers for the spring, and they're all kind of split up. Again, these are not massive sample sizes. But I think while we're talking about some of these battles and some of these guys and who needs to go where, who has done what, who has proven what, I want to have some numbers to back up what I'm saying. And so I don't want this to be me reading these numbers and you say, oh, so-and-so has a higher batting average than so-and-so. So clearly he's starting over that guy. Like that's not really what I'm aiming to do here. But as we talk about these positions and we talk about all the different, threads that have gone throughout the season, different trends and how guys are performing and how we felt, because I think we all agree. If you would have asked us in August what the starting lineup was, we might have given you a completely different look. And then if you'd asked us in November, it might have been completely different again. And then if you ask us a week ago, it's completely different. Hell, I even did an episode a week ago where I was putting some lineups together. It would look completely different if I did that again today. And so, again, I'm just trying to do my best to monitor all these situations as closely as possible. So let's first look at the outfield real quick. And we're going to go through some numbers here. So again, entering the spring, I should say, spring as in January, these last few weeks, I felt like Arkansas had a surefire center fielder in Charles Davalon. I felt like you had a surefire starter at one of the corner outfield spots in Logan Maxwell, the TCU transfer, of course, and then Davalon being the Florida Gulf Coast transfer. And I felt like Rocco Pepe and Kendall Diggs were two guys that were locked for the lineup. It just was a matter of if it was going to be in the outfield or if it was going to be a DH or if it was going to be at first base. And I would say like the spring has made me kind of rethink just that simple statement right there. One, because Justin Thomas has clearly forced his way into this discussion. He's a guy that it seems like they really like. And started to show some flashes at the end of fall that kind of put him in this battle. He gets a start in the exhibition series against Oklahoma State, makes the most of it with some of those guys banged up. And then every single scrimmage, there have been 6 so far this spring. Justin Thomas has been with the starting lineup at center field and at left field. And so to say that he's not a serious candidate would just not be accurately telling the story. And so I think he's definitely much more in line with like that starting group and in that mix than I probably gave him credit for going into spring. And so you look at it, he's gone 3 of 12. So hitting 250, I believe is what that math adds up to. He has the home run. He has a triple. So he showed off some power there, has worked 3 walks and has struck out 5 times, added a couple stolen bases in there. So what he's done is he's played pretty solid baseball again, playing some left field, playing some center. They feel like he's one of their better defenders out there in the outfield. I would say him and Davalon for sure are kind of the 2 guys. If you were really going for a defense first lineup, those 2 guys would certainly be in it. So I wouldn't say Justin Thomas has gone into the spring and completely solidified his claim and made it clear he's a no doubt surefire starter. But he's played some pretty good ball. I would say he's looked the part, is sitting in there with the starting lineup. And so he's definitely a guy that whether he ends up starting opening day or not, they clearly view him as a starter, and I think he's performed well enough to kind of warrant that consideration. Kendall Diggs up next. I have him. He's hitting 353, 6 of 17. Again, very small sample sizes. He's got the 1 home run. He's got a double. He's drawn 3 walks as well, and like Justin Thomas, has struck out 5 times. He looks like Kendall Diggs. He looks every bit the part that he looked as a sophomore when he hit 312 home runs. He definitely looks much improved from the guy we saw down the stretch last year, where it just felt like even if he squared a ball up, it was going 240 feet to right field. Like it just didn't have that dynamism that he usually has. He's looked awesome. He's seen a ton of pitches. Again, I mentioned the 3 walks. He's drawn some walks. He's hit opposite field. He's hit for power. He's been very solid. So it doesn't look like there's any more catching up for him to do at the plate. That, by the way, we always kind of wondered, why is he not running? If he's coming off a shoulder injury, Van Horn did clarify that he was dealing with a little bit of a hamstring thing. And so they didn't have him run for a little bit, but he's back now. He played some first base in the first scrimmages, DH in the first scrimmages. This past weekend, he was able to get back out there and play right field. So not only is he back to form at the plate, he's a candidate at first base and is still a candidate at right field. So we are no closer to getting any clarity on what Kendall Diggs' role is going to be. But what we did figure out is that he is the old Kendall Diggs, if you will. He is a surefire starter in this Razorback lineup, whether it's at first base, DH, or right field. And so, again, nothing really has changed. It just is nice to get that confirmation, see him look really good. And so, obviously, any conversation we have for either of these spots, we're going to have to mention Kendall Diggs and take him very seriously. And Rocco Pepe, who doesn't have quite as gaudy numbers as Kendall Diggs, but I would argue has played just as well. So he's 4 of 16. That's 250. Not a crazy batting average. Only struck out 1 time, though. And that's in basically 19, 20 plate appearances, 1 strikeout. Dave Van Horn actually said the other day he hit some balls hard last weekend and just had some bad luck. So only 250, but he has the home run. He's drawn 3 walks, added a stolen base as well. He's played really good, and he was really good in the fall when we got to see him a little bit. He's, of course, coming off a year where he hit a career high 320 plus, hit a career high 14 home runs, got experience, got the tools all around. Again, I don't feel any differently about him in terms of viewing him as an everyday piece in the lineup. The question is just if it's going to be at first base. He played some right field also in this past weekend scrimmages as well. So it just kind of lets you know he's still a candidate there. I got the feeling that they're going to really try their best to get him ready to play first base. And if we were playing MLB The Show, this would be a lot easier. You just say, all right, yeah, throw one of Diggs or Pepe at first base, move whoever you want out there in the outfield, DH, you can alternate. We're all good. But I think they really don't just want to throw someone at first base that they know is going to hit. I think they want to have a real defensive third or first baseman. Will Rocco Pepe be that? I don't know. I haven't seen anything that makes me think he's like an issue, that he stinks defensively. But I've seen a ball or two that he probably could have gotten the scoop on. I wasn't there last weekend, but he allegedly made an error on a slow roller to him. I don't know what that play looked like. But I guess I would just say it hasn't been made abundantly clear that this is like a Ben McLaughlin, Trevor Rizal situation where that's the first baseman and he's an above average defender there. Conversation over. I think there's still a little bit of a, concern as to whether or not he can really play first base. And they're going to continue to try and get him ready. This coaching staff's great at developing these guys from a defensive standpoint. And so I have no doubt whoever ends up being there is going to be fine. But again, I feel like Diggs and Pepe are everyday starters, have proven they're going to hit, and you can count on them there. It's just a matter of where they're at. I mentioned Pepe in this outfield battle, but I really do think he's more of in that first base DH battle. Charles Davalon up next, and he also was banged up, had a weird little situation where he caught a ball up against the fence, missed the rest of that scrimmage, and then came back the next day and was a DH only. He got back to playing the field last week after I think he DH'd the first game and then got out there and played some left field. He's been 4 of 16. So again, same kind of batting average range, 250, has a double, has drawn a couple walks, only 3 strikeouts. So not the 1 strikeout of Rocco Pepe that's been, pretty notable, but also not striking out quite as much as Thomas and Diggs. I would actually say like Pepe, I said he hit 250 and it seems like he's been better than that. Davalon's hit 250 and like he's been about a 250 hitter. Like it's been fine. was banged up a little bit. He's also a guy that had a really good fall and is coming off of a nice freshman year. I have pretty much zero concern about him. I just wouldn't say that he's blown anything away. The next two guys we got to mention here, Logan Maxwell, who was good in the fall, started slow, finished strong. He's also coming off of back-to-back years where he hit 300 at TCU. So you would just assume, and we've kind of done that all offseason, where we've assumed that he's an everyday starter in the lineup. I got to be honest with you guys. I don't know if I'm still there anymore. He's been in the starting lineup every scrimmage for these last two games, especially because they typically will move one of Diggs or Pepe to the other team, to serve as either the DH, first baseman, right fielder, whatever. You also had Davalon miss some time there. So it kind of made sense for both he and Thomas, who have been in the starting lineup every game, but just mathematically speaking, both of those guys can be. Logan Maxwell's hitting 154 this spring. He's 2 for 13, 0 extra base hits, only 2 strikeouts. So I don't want to make it seem like he's just been getting mowed down or anything, but also only drawn 1 walk. So not a ton of power, not a ton of getting on base. He's proven a lot in his career. Like, he's clearly someone that Arkansas is going to play. He's going to get plenty of starts, but I don't know if at this point it's as for sure of a thing that he's going to be in the everyday lineup in the outfield. Could he DH? Could he be a platoon option there? But I mean, you just look at it. Diggs is going to hit. He's going to play. Charles Davalon, he's going to hit. He's going to play. Rocco Pepe, he's going to hit. He's going to play. Maybe not in the outfield, but that's 3 guys that might be starting in the outfield. I mentioned Justin Thomas, who's been really good. It's definitely not a surefire, no have a conversation about it type of thing when it comes to Logan Maxwell starting. We'll see. I mean, he's definitely capable of hitting much better than he has so far. But if we're just kind of going off of the way things have been trending, I think he finds himself in a little bit more of a battle, which we haven't really, like, I've been covering this offseason, a lot. I've been doing a lot of episodes covering the outfield battle. Y'all haven't really heard me say, hey, I don't know if we're sure if Logan Maxwell is going to start. And I'm still not quite to the point where I'm like worried about it. But I think, between him and Justin Thomas, you kind of have to make a decision. And really, you have a right-handed hitter and a left-handed hitter. There's room to platoon there. But I think you actually have a little bit of a battle there. Whereas, like, I don't think Justin Thomas's battle is with Kendall Diggs or with Rocco Pepe, especially because one or both of those guys can play other positions. I think it's going to be very fascinating to see how this whole thing plays out. I still feel very good about Logan Maxwell and what he can bring to the lineup, a good left-handed bat that gets on base, but he's got some work to do to kind of like solidify that spot for sure. And so I'm not saying he should go into this weekend with a bunch of pressure on his shoulders, but it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. Kahio Aloy is one I got to mention because he's apparently not in the first base battle anymore. They think he's more of an outfielder long-term. He's really a DH option, if we're being honest. That's kind of where he's at. Perhaps he'll play some outfield in midweek games or whatever, but I think if he's starting on the weekend, it's DH or bust for Kahio Aloy. That's just kind of where it's at. And when you're vying for the starting DH spot, it's really tough to go 1 for 12 in the first 2 weekends of spring leading up to the season. And with that 1 for 12, the 1 is a double. So that's nice. He hit 4 home runs in the fall, has not hit any this spring here. 0 walks and 6 strikeouts is a tough one. And so both he and Maxwell are guys that I left the fall thinking for sure, those are guys that are going to be in the starting lineup. I'm definitely less confident, specifically on the Aloy side. I think that he's just got, a little bit more of an uphill battle, and it's just a DH situation for him. I think they'll give him some chances to play the outfield throughout the year. He's been playing outfield in scrimmages, but I don't think it's one of those things where day one you're going to see him starting over whether it would be Maxwell or Thomas or Diggs or Davalon out there in the outfield. I think he could definitely get into the lineup at DH and will be a platoon option there, but has not been the spring that would necessarily make that dead set where it's like a guy that you can't take out of the lineup type of situation. Moving on to the first base battle a little bit. I'll try to speed through this one a little bit quicker. I kind of lingered on the O-line a little bit, or on the outfield, not O-line. Kendall Diggs and Rocco Pepe, of course, I mentioned them in the outfield battle. They have both been playing first base. I feel like both are legitimate candidates to really play there every day. And so it kind of, with them, it depends on, of course, can they play defense there? Diggs came to Arkansas as an infielder. He's played some first base. There wasn't a ton hit his way. Haven't seen him asked to do too much. And he's played some outfield out there too. just the gut feel I get is that Diggs is going to be more of a threat to start in the outfield, and Pepe is more of a threat to start at first base. But maybe that flips this weekend, and so hopefully we get some kind of clarity on how they feel about it, how those guys look. Would really love to go out to Bomb this weekend and see Rocco Pepe just putting on a pick and performance, just a pick machine over there. It would be nice. It would really do me a lot of clarity. It would help me a lot, and it would make me kind of stop asking myself so many questions and get out of my own head with this lineup if we could just pencil in Rocco Pepe at first base and move on. But part of the reason that we can't pencil Rocco Pepe into first base is because Michael Anderson has rejuvenated his hitting prowess, his power. Michael Anderson, the Rhode Island transfer, who has 23 home runs to his career, had an awesome freshman year, dipped a little bit as a sophomore, but has a ton of experience, ton of power, ton of upside, and certainly looks the part. He's also probably Arkansas's best defender there at first base. He definitely has the most game experience playing first base. And he's always looked good. I mean, since he's gotten on campus, he's been fine. DVH has mentioned his defense multiple times. So you've got the power potential and the defense. So far this spring, and again, after a rough fall for Mike Anderson, just didn't hit a ton, which DVH said for him and Kojal, he's like, I like both those guys, expected them to be good. They got a hit. And Michael Anderson has certainly done that here in the spring. He's 414, so that's a 286 average for those counting at home. But of those 4 hits, 2 are home runs, 1 is a double. That is a 786 slugging percentage, which is big time. That's big time stuff. He has not drawn a walk, but he's only struck out 3 times, which isn't great. 3 strikeouts and 14 at bats, but this is a guy that he's always going to be a high strikeout guy. And so 3 and 14 at bats, you'll live with that one for sure. He's shown some of that power. He's kind of shown why he's a factor in this discussion. I think he's definitely going to be getting some starts early in the season at first base. It's just a matter of if he's going to produce consistently enough offensively to really make it work. It is just interesting that the big time power guy is also the fielding guy. So it's like if you were going to the defense first lineup, you might consider Michael Anderson. And then if he hits for you and produces some power, it's kind of a plus. So I think he's definitely reintroduced himself to this first base battle. I think at this point, if you're just asking me my opinion, I think it's kind of between him and Pepe if they really want to do that with Pepe. And if Michael Anderson starts, I think Pepe is going to be in the lineup somewhere else. So you could really actually make a case that Michael Anderson is competing with like Justin Thomas or Logan Maxwell for a starting spot. If you really think about it from that standpoint, because if you think, hey, Michael Anderson's for sure a guy that needs to be in this lineup, well, then it's going to be at first base. And if it's going to be at first base, that means Rocco Pepe is going to play the outfield or he's DHing. And so it kind of bumps one of those guys. And then, of course, there's a Kendall Diggs aspect of it. And so there's just all kind of variables here. But Mike Anderson, I think, has definitely reintroduced himself as a very, very serious candidate there at first base. And we'll see if he's able to keep it up this weekend and make another little push there. Another guy that we have not seen at first base yet, but we've all been kind of waiting to see where he might end up and if he can crack the lineup. I just mentioned him a little bit earlier at the top. That's Cam Kojal, the Vanderbilt transfer, who really just didn't hit in the fall. He hit around 200, didn't hit for power, didn't draw a ton of walks, was just kind of fine. And I think he clearly, Nolan Souza has that second base position pretty much, not pretty much, he has that second base position locked up. And so, people kind of wondered, is Kojal going to be in the mix there? It seems like his path is more in that first base DH range. And DVH mentioned multiple times the other day him getting DH starts. So I think that's something they might give to him just to try and get him going. And by the way, he's done a good job of getting going here in this spring. He's 5 for 14, so 357 average. Again, small sample size. He's got a double. He even stole a base. He's played great defense, by the way, at second or wherever he's been. It's been second base. He's played good defense as well. What I like, he walked 3 times. Which isn't like a massive amount necessarily, but 3 walks, like that's respectable. It's also more walks than he had in the entire fall. If you look at Cam Kojal's career, I think he walked 14 or 15 times in his freshman year at Vanderbilt. Wasn't like a huge part of his game. He played in the Cape for about 30 games, didn't walk a ton there either, and then only walked twice in his first fall at Arkansas, which was about, 40-ish, 45 plate appearances, nothing crazy. But again, if you're talking about a guy who, we're let's just be honest. We're at Arkansas. This is the top of the SEC. Like, we're trying to win a national championship. And so if you're going to be in the lineup every day, you can't not for a hit for a high average, not hit for a ton of power, and not draw walks. The math just doesn't really add up. And so we knew something was going to have to change. And so far this spring, he's hitting for a higher average. Doesn't have a home run yet as a Razorback, but did hit a double, so that's nice. Drew a few walks. If he can just get on base at even a respectable clip, I think he's going to be an option there at first base or DH. Again, I mentioned the defense. I think he's kind of your last resort because he's a really good defensive shortstop. I haven't seen him play first base. They haven't thrown him over there. Part of why I think they haven't thrown him over there is, one, they're trying to get reps for these other guys, and you need 2 second basemen to play the scrimmages. But I think they kind of know he's an above average defender at second base. He would be an above average defender at first base. Of course, you got to learn how to play the position and all that. But like DVH said the other day, none of it matters if he can't hit. He's got to hit before they can even start to think about how do we get this guy in the lineup. And so it seems like he's responded well to that challenge. And, they've definitely, I think that he's not going to be the starting second baseman. We can officially declare that. But I do think he's going to get some, whether it's platoon options, he's going to get some starts at DH, and he's going to potentially work his way into this first base mix as well. Rocco Pepe is a right-handed hitter. Michael Anderson is a right-handed hitter. Kendall Diggs is a left-handed hitter, but I don't know if I'm really buying that he's going to actually start at first base. The only other lefty that could possibly play first base is Reese Robinette, who Big Country, who we love, is 2 for 14 with 8 strikeouts so far this spring. And he hasn't been playing first base at all. He's been playing mostly third base. He's a solid defender as well. Someone I think they would feel okay about putting over there. But I think Cam Kojal, it's kind of the runway is kind of there for Cam Kojal to work his way into this mix. So I think if he strings together a pretty good weekend in these next 3 scrimmages, it's going to be hard to not want to throw him a bone and give him a start opening weekend, especially when you got 4 games. And so do not shut the door yet on Cam Kojal. I think he's a factor there in that first base battle. But again, I'm listing off all these names. I think all these guys are like in this mix as well. And it's really hard to eliminate guys. I think if I'm being honest with you, the coaching staff was probably relieved when Cam Kojal stunk in the fall, because they're like, all right, now we don't have to make a decision at second base. We got Sousa's our guy there. And we can actually work out some of these other guys at first base. Like, it just gives them less of a decision to make. I'm sure as a coach, it must be nice to just know who the 9 guys are and then just let them go play. But it's also a good problem to have, of course. I'm speaking in jest. I know that they of course want options, but I think they want it. This coaching staff certainly does want these guys to make it hard on them. But Kojal and Anderson both, got to give them both credit. Didn't have the falls they wanted to, but both have really risen to the occasion and answered the bell here in the spring. And we'll see if they can keep it up. Moving on a little bit, and I've gone a little bit long-winded here. The starting pitching, it won't take me too long to get through because we kind of know the guys. We've done the conversation 10 times already. So the numbers for anyone who thinks this is like an obvious decision of like, yeah, you clearly got to go with Baumbastic or you clearly got to go with Wood. It's just not. Like, both guys have thrown really well. Both guys have experience as starters. Hell, Baumbastic threw like 90 innings last year. He's the guy who, like, I think it's kind of set up, might be the odd man out here. And he actually might have the strongest case to be like a weekend starter than any of these guys. So it's been a tough decision from that standpoint, just from what these guys have proven in their careers. But again, you would probably be convenient if these guys if their performances at Arkansas were vastly different. They're not. So Zach Root has been the quote unquote worst of the 4 starting options. He's been the worst so far this spring. He's gone 5 innings, allowed 5 hits, a couple runs, 2 runs. He's walked 3, struck out 7. Opponents are hitting 263 against him, which is a little high. You definitely want to see that number go down. But we're talking about a pretty small sample size. And, he's given up 1 run in each of his outings. 1 that went 2 innings, 1 that went 3 innings. He's been pretty solid. He hadn't been great, but he's been, like I said, the worst. Gabe Gackle, who I think we all agree is like a surefire, no doubt, in the starting rotation, likely your number 1. He's gone 4 2/3, given up 3 hits, just the 1 run, which I believe came on a home run from Zane Becker. I could be wrong on that. I think it was a home run from Zane Becker. He's only walked one, and he struck out 5. So not like dominant in numbers necessarily, but only the 1 run in 4 2/3. Opponents are hitting 188 against him. Hasn't been a ton of traffic on the base paths. Just the 1 walk, which I believe was to Brenton Clark, and he was the first batter he faced this spring. So since then, he's really been lights out. I mentioned Beidelshees. He's gone 5 1/3. He's given up 2 hits, 1 run, 3 walks, all of which I believe came in his first outing. I think he had 3 walks in 2 innings in his first outing, then goes 3 1/3 the other day and doesn't walk anybody. Has 8 strikeouts, 6 of which came in his outing last weekend. So 1 run and 5 1/3, you'll obviously live with that. 8 strikeouts and 5 1/3, you'll definitely live with that. 111 opponents batting against Landon Beidelshees. Again, if you think it's like an easy decision, you should definitely go with Gage Wood. It's pretty hard to tell a guy who's throwing that well, hey, actually, buddy, we need you to not do the role that we brought you in here to do. I think Arkansas is going to get to that point, but certainly not going to be an easy one. And speaking of Gage Wood, you can make an argument he's been the best out of all these guys, and he might be the one that had the most ground to make up entering the offseason practices. He's gone 6 innings, which is more than any of these other guys. He went a full 4 innings last week in his outing. Just 2 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. I believe he struck out 3 in 4 innings last week. So he just was cruising, getting early soft contact. I think it was only like 40 something pitches. It's like 4 innings, 47 pitches or something like that. So the 2 walks, but he's throwing a ton of strikes, getting a ton of quick outs. Opponents hitting 111 against him, and he's got 5 strikeouts there too, so he's missing some bats. Hard to ask for much more out of him right there, honestly, especially for a guy who's trying to solidify himself in this conversation. I feel like he's done a great job. Honestly, man, I just don't know how this coaching staff makes this decision. Again, I'm past the point where I'm going to sit here and try and like tell you guys how to feel about this situation. The other day I did a pitching staff breakdown, and I had Gage Wood in that setup closing role and Landon Beidelshees in that third starter role. Like 70% of the reason I did that is simply because they've gone with the last 2 scrimmages. They've had Gackle throw on Friday, Root throw on Saturday, and Beidelshees throw on Sunday, both weekends. I just kind of took that to mean, okay, that's they're prepping those guys to throw on those specific days. Gage Wood threw on Friday in the first week and then threw on Saturday last week. So judging by my own logic, if they go out there and throw Gage Wood on Sunday this next week here, then we're kind of back to square one. And again, I'm not saying for sure that's what the coaching staff was doing, but when you have a decision that is coming down to the wire like this, where there's not really a wrong answer, I'm looking for any type of tea leaves I can to try and figure out how they're going to go about this thing. So I think that's another big question as we go into this next weekend or this last weekend here, starting tomorrow. What day do Beidelshees and Wood throw? Do they both throw on Sunday against one another? Is that how you go about it? Wood threw against Gackle, in week 1 against Root last week. Now is it just his time to throw against Beidelshees? Maybe that was the plan all along, to kind of ramp Gage Wood up to that. Not like they're throwing a ton of innings. Like whoever throws, this weekend, maybe 4 innings at the absolute most, maybe 60 pitches or something like that. I don't think any of these guys are going to throw a ton to where like it really matters and they have to throw on that day next week. But just as you're moving closer, I feel like it just kind of makes sense. And of course, one of those guys we expect to throw on Monday in the game 4 of that series. So it's a fascinating situation. We'll see how it plays out. And again, we'll just see if there's any separation. I just read you the numbers. There's really not a ton of separation between the way that all these guys are throwing. So like, any argument you're going to make for why one guy should start over the other, it's really hard to cite any of those numbers and be like if I was going to make the case for Beidelshees, am I really going to be like, he's got a couple more strikeouts, also got 1 more walk. They had the exact same opponent's batting average. Like it doesn't really make sense. It's that wouldn't be the basis of your argument. And so maybe that changes this weekend. Maybe one of these guys will just go out there and stink it up. And that'll help make the decision a little bit easier. If there were one guy you could make that argument against, it would be Zach Root. But I don't really think he's in the discussion right now. And DVH even alluded to that yesterday, saying, we know the first 2, we just don't know about that third. I think it means what I've been trying to tell you guys all along, which is it's Gackle, Root, and then you make a decision between Beidelshees and Wood. And it's kind of crazy that this conversation has played out throughout the entire offseason. Usually we have some type of clarity before this time. Before we get out of here, guys, I'm done now. I'm done dealing and ranting with the three big unanswered questions. Before I get out of here, though, I did just want to note a few notable performances throughout these scrimmages. On the pitching side, Parker Coyle has thrown 2 innings. He has given up 1 hit. He is not allowed a run. He is not allowed a walk. He has struck out 6. If you do the math, it's pretty good. Christian Fouch, he has gone 2 innings. He has allowed 1 hit, 0 runs, 0 walks, 5 strikeouts. Pretty good, right? Will McIntyre, veteran, got to note him as well. 4 innings, couple hits, did give up 1 run, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts in 4 innings pitched for Will McIntyre. Dave spoke very highly of him yesterday at the Swatters Club. Good to see Willie Mack. He ain't going nowhere, man. Whether you like it or not, he's going to keep getting that ball, man, because they trust him. He works his ass off, and he's been around, been through the battles. Good to see him pitching well as we lead into his final season in Fayetteville. Ross Felder, the freshman, we've talked about a lot on this show. We've been really impressed with his performances. Now we got some numbers to back it up. He's gone 5 innings so far this spring, 3 hits, 1 run. It was an unearned run, so still 0 ERA, 0 walks, 6 strikeouts. What a way to introduce yourself to the bullpen conversation. We commend you, Ross Felder. Shout out to the Springdale native. And then on the hitting side, all off season long, we've said, who are 2 guys that you think are going to take that big, that next step to being breakout candidates? And who are the 2 guys I've kind of said, if you can guarantee me these 2 guys are good, Arkansas baseball is going to be in a very good spot. The 2 leaders of the team so far this spring in OPS, Ryder Helfrich and Nolan Souza, the sophomores that we've kind of all circled. Those are the guys that need to step up. They have done it so far this spring after good falls as well. Ryder Helfrich, 5 of 11, which I believe is like a 455 batting average, 2 home runs, 2 walks, and a hit by pitch, 4 sacrifice flies. 4 sacrifice flies in 2 weekends. That's that's kind of just an odd stat there that it's happened that often that he's been in that situation. But for a guy that's going to be kind of hitting in that 5, 6, 7 range, I like seeing the situational awareness. I like seeing him being able to do a job. So good stuff from Ryder Helfrich all around. Hard to ask for much more. He's also only struck out twice, and he's stolen a base as a catcher. So Ryder Helfrich, good at baseball. Nolan Souza, also good at baseball. He's 7 of 17 at the plate. Was that like a 380 something average? I don't know. My math's not great. One of those 7 hits being a home run. One of those 7 hits being a triple. 5 of 5 on stolen bases. And this is after him being 13 of 14 in the fall. So that's now 18 of 19 this offseason stealing bags. Nolan Souza. Anybody that ever asked, hey, who's going to be the leading base stealer this year? It's Nolan Souza. It's not even close. It's definitely going to be Nolan Souza. This offseason, he's pretty much doubled, and not pretty much. He has doubled up his next closest teammate when it comes to stolen bases this offseason. He's been unreal. He's also got a sac fly, also got a couple walks in there. Struck out 5 times, so a little bit more swing and miss. He's only gotten out 10 times this fall or this spring, and 5 of them are strikeouts. So if you're going to get Nolan Souza out, you pretty much got to make him swing and miss, and he will do that from time to time, but he's been awesome. Brent Iredale's a guy who everybody was freaking out about after week 1. They were like, man, just really disappointed in Iredale. Like, I thought he was going to be better, and I don't know, are we sure this guy's that good? And he's 5 of 17 overall. And this is after going, I think he was like 1 of 8 or something like that last weekend or the first weekend. He's 5 for 17 overall, which may not sound great. That's like right under 300. I believe that's 294. 2 of his 5 hits are home runs. He's also stolen a bag, has been caught stealing. So he's 1 of 2 on stolen bases. He's drawn 4 walks, which I feel like is notable for a guy who's going to be hitting in the middle of the lineup. I believe that also is the tied for the most on the team with Brenton Clark, the freshman. Struck out 6 times. So there's going to be some swing and miss there for sure. But I feel like Brent Iredale gotten on base a good amount, drawn some walks, driven in a ton of runs, showed off some power, showed off some speed, been really good defensively at third base. He's very good. He's been very good. And speaking of guys who have been much better in the second weekend than they were in the first. Vahiva Aloy, 8 of 19, which is a 421 batting average, does not have a home run this spring yet. So is he washed up? I don't know. Maybe he is. I kid. He does have 3 doubles. 3 doubles to go along with that. He's also stolen a couple bases, which is nice to see. Drawn a couple walks, and get this, only 3 strikeouts so far in basically 22, 23 plate appearances. Only 3 strikeouts for Vahiva Aloy. We all know he's got some swing and miss in his game. Seems like he's taken some strides to being a little bit less all or nothing. And so I wouldn't mind trading a few of those strikeouts for a home run or 2. Maybe strike out a few more times, but you also are hitting some bombs, and he's going to hit plenty this upcoming season. So just wanted to note a few of those notable performances and reassess kind of where we're at going into this final weekend of scrimmages. I am going to be there at Baum-Walker Stadium this weekend, so I look forward to being back out at the yard for one last time before we really kick things off for real. So I will be having some coverage, some videos after each scrimmage to kind of go through the action. I'll do what I normally do, just kind of go through play-by-play, talk about who stood out. You guys know the drill. Appreciate everybody for being here. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you like and subscribe the Inside Arkansas YouTube channel, the best one-stop shop for all things Razorback. Again, appreciate you guys for being with me today on this brilliant edition of the Baumbastic Podcast. I will be back tomorrow for some post-scrimmage action. See you then.